I'm Tim Ventura, and we're joined today by Debbie Ziegelmeyer, the MUFON Director of Underwater Research and Recovery. Debbie joined MUFON in 2000 and is currently a MUFON Star Team Investigator, the State Director of Missouri, a member of the MUFON Business Board of Directors, the Functional Director of Underwater Research and Recovery, a Benefactor and Inner Circle member, and a MUFON archivist. She's also a member of Ted Phillips' SIU TPRC team, and in 2004 organized the MUFON Dive Team along with Tom Ferrario, a current TPRC team leader. Debbie has over 1,200 completed UFO investigations, with over 860 of them being MUFON sighting reports. She also teaches a MUFON Field Investigation Dive Team course, which instructs investigators in both water and onshore responsibilities and protocols. She's been a Roswell 1947 crash investigator for over 25 years and has been an annual Roswell, New Mexico July Festival speaker, and has numerous speaking appearances on the UFO Watchtower in Hooper, Colorado, along with other speaking engagements at a large number of MUFON events. Debbie has also been featured as a subject matter expert on numerous UFO-related TV series and specials. Debbie, welcome. It is a true pleasure to have you with me today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I sound busy, don't I? I'm also a business owner.
So, you know what, when I was going through your bio, I left this out. You have a list of TV series and shows that just goes on and on and on. And I thought, normally I like to try and condense those, right, so that I can showcase everything that my guest has done. But in this case, you have done so much, I was just like, okay, there's no way I can even get into this. So
I've been
people
around.
should just be...
Been around a long time.
Yeah, people should be aware. People should be aware that you are a very busy person.
Yeah.
So,
well, more recently, I was on Alaska Triangle, so I actually went diving in Alaska, and then also I think last week I came out on Ancient Alien, talking about the 37th parallel. So that's just a couple more recent. I'll be speaking at the MUFON Symposium too, if anybody's interested in my update on water and what's been going on. There's a lot more than anybody would even begin to imagine.
Well, and so I'm going to put links in the show notes to your bio and to some of your YouTube presentations and things like that. And I definitely want people to check those out. So today we are discussing UAP encounters in the ocean, and I use that in context. I would just say the water in general. And again, I think this is very exciting because it's something that people are aware of, but it's not getting the press. So you are the perfect person to speak about this. Let me start by asking about your current role as the MUFON Director of Underwater Research and Recovery and your work on the MUFON Dive Team. What led you into this specialization, and what do these roles entail?
Well, it started out with my husband and my son deciding they wanted to be scuba divers. And they had so much fun. They got me involved. We, at the time, had a condo in the Florida Keys. And the more I spent, the more time underwater, I thought, no one is researching this. And naturally, being interested in water and that it's 70% of the earth is covered by water, I thought, what a perfect place to hide. And so for years, I've been trying to get people enthusiastic about sightings, water sightings. And in fact, a couple years ago, I wrote a book, The Alien Colonization of Earth's Waterways. And that just started out a little book about water sightings that I had accumulated the information over 20 years. And I had so much of it, it ended up being a reference book. I didn't know how much information. But I've really focused more on water ever since I had a personal sighting off a cruise ship. And I went diving in St. Martin. This was January 25th of 2006. I'm diving all day. And then we leave St. Martin on a Royal Caribbean ship. We're heading towards St. Thomas. And I see two craft hovering over the water. They're doing this about the size of cars, glowing, typical saucer shape, kind of glowing in orange. And my first reaction was to turn around and look and see what on the ship was reflecting onto the water. And when I
Hmm.
turned back around, we were leaving them behind. I mean, so it reset my camera to February 5th, about 11 days after this happened, every picture after that. But that in itself, that there, I'd already started the dive team in 2003. This was 2006. So you could be in the right place um, and the right time, but maybe not deep enough, or I was in the right place, maybe at the wrong time. I was diving all the way up until about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and then at 6:20, we out in the ocean, and there they are.
It's
So
amazing. Amazing.
that really piqued my interest. I started doing a lot more research on that, and trying to get more people to concentrate. Carl Feind, I became friends with him. He had a great book. We used to go to the MUFON symposiums and shoot ideas back and forth on theories and why the water and what was going on with it. And that's, I
Yeah.
mean, kind of the gist of it. We have sightings here in Missouri in and around our rivers, and I've discovered that's a lot of it. It's not just our oceans and seas, which there's so much information about that. I mean, it's
There's a lot. There's a lot. Well, if
a
it's okay,
lot.
I want to jump into some of the documented military evidence that's out there. And again,
Uh-huh.
because this is making headlines, I think, and people are more familiar with this. And one of the things that interests me about this is this information is out there and there's awareness, but I think all of us have awareness that we are kind of lacking in this ocean connection, right? We know that there's a connection there, but again, when people think UFOs, they're thinking, Roswell, Area 51, land, desert, things like that. And so this ocean connection is something that is kind of newer that we know happens, we know exists, but it's kind of entering our consciousness. So in terms of the recent events that have been making headlines, there is this tremendous connection to the oceans that is coming out, right? We have overlapping visual, sensor, and radar footage from the Nimitz carrier group near Catalina Island in the Pacific. Reports of training incursions by Ryan Graves in the W-72 training area, Virginia Beach, over the Atlantic. Radar data for UAP swarming the USS Omaha off the San Diego coast. So again, this is kind of that Catalina down to Ensenada area. And then there's also U.S. Customs footage of transmedium craft over Aguadilla in Puerto Rico. And that's actually one of my favorite videos just because it is so clear and long and there's so much detail there. So again, from what I understand, this connection has always been there, but it's just not getting that much attention until recently, right?
Right. And I've always been talking about it. I've always had presentations about water. And when it was Jeremy Corbell was able to release the first three videos, Go Fast, Fleur, and oh gosh, it went right out of my head. Go Fast, Fleur, and oh well, the three videos. There's two off of the Roosevelt from January 21st of 2015, and then the one from the Nimitz from 2004. Gimbal was the third one. Their
Yeah.
code names for them. I was just in over at Catalina Island in let's see, it was January of last year. Got a little bit of video of something just a little strange. I've also, of course, been to, let's see, well, to that area, investigated. I've been to Puerto Rico and investigated. Haven't seen anything in Puerto Rico, but have seen, like I said, things off of cruise ships. What most people don't realize how far back, I want to read this exactly. This is just a short passage that I found in the Bible. Let's see here. Oh, Zechariah 5:1-2. Then I turned and lifted up mine eyes and looked, and behold, a flying roll. And he said unto me, What seest thou? And I answered, I see a flying roll. The length thereof is 20 cubits, and the beneath thereof 10 cubits. There was a tic tac recorded in the Bible, and one, I guess, about 30 foot by 15 foot in diameter. So this goes back a long time. I believe a lot of these Tic Tacs, as they're being called now, were some of the cylinder-shaped craft. Some of the, let's see, we had cylinder, we had elongated, but I think a cigar shape. So they've been around, but for whatever reason now, it seems like they're more reported more in and around the water. Last year, we had two different police officers near the Mississippi River report seeing giant Tic Tacs. We had a fantastic sighting in 2011. A mother and her teenage son were crossing Jefferson Barracks Bridge from Missouri, St. Louis area into Illinois, and this thing came by, it shot by really quick. The young man had a camera, his cell phone, and he took just bang, 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 11 shots and got them in a row and had this thing just going all the way across the river. And that was the first Tic Tac that I had seen. It reset the camera. I mean, there's EMF effect from this. Puerto Rico, I spoke to Jorge Martin, who is the lead investigator for UFOs in that area and has been. Fantastic man. He's got a book out. And he believes there's some type of a base there south of Ponce. He's got, on his website, he's got like a wormhole opening up, people that send in pictures. That's a very, very active area. But then also, too, Earl Gray is the state director of Southern California, and he's got a lot of sightings in around the Catalina Island area. There's also some specials out now. There's a documentary about that, and they caught some interesting things. The water, why the water? That's what I've been trying to figure out. At first, I thought, okay, well, it's a very good place to hide. Our submarines going back, I've got reports from Russia in the 70s, things there in the water. And like I said, it's a good place to hide, but a lot of times way out in the oceans, it's military vessels that are seeing this, and there's the secret. That's why they're keeping it. There's a lot of activity. When you've got 70% of the ocean and you've only got 5% of our waterways that are actually that have been explored, wow, what a great place to hide. What a great place to maneuver over and not be seen.
So let me touch on that, because these underwater encounters are, for me, this is really intriguing, right? And again, we have this emerging connection to water that most people are familiar with. One of the other things that is starting to kind of come out are submarine officers that are recounting events. They include phenomena such as strange underwater sounds, swift-moving objects detected by sonar, instances of submarines being outmaneuvered by USOs or unidentified submersible objects. And again, from what I understand, and part of this is because the secrecy involved with the submarine fleet, right? So
Right.
it's not as much out there as it is with the traditional Navy, and there are a lot of different reasons for that. But this is at least important enough to be a factor in naming AARO the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, as opposed to, aerospace or UFOs or anything like that. So the reason that they went with all domain was to take this into account, not just the oceans, but these USO events, right? The unidentified submersible objects. So you touched on the submarine encounters. From what I understand, there are all sorts of these that are kind of circulating as rumors, right? They're not well substantiated, but they're kind of out there.
Well, they would be, and I'm sorry, I reached over there to grab this. I wanted to make sure I have the right date. That in July of 2022, the Pentagon had decided that they were going to concentrate on water sightings. So yes, you're right. There's a lot that they could concentrate on, but it seems like that's where it's going on now. And we just had the sighting in Iraq too. That film was released. It was shot in 2018, and that was that.
You mean the Mosul
jellyfish.
sphere?
Yeah, well, it was a jellyfish.
Okay. The
object
jellyfish
that came
one.
by, and according to Jerry Corbell, he said that the video, only part of it, he has permission to show only part of it, but apparently It went across our military base, went into the water for 17 minutes. And then when it finally came out, he said it shot out of the water at such a high rate of speed, they couldn't even catch it on a still photo. It was just gone. So
Oh,
that's
see,
the latest one released, and that's 2018.
I would love to see more of that. What I saw was, and I'm going to sound critical on this, but I saw I think the normal clip of the jellyfish, and someone had posted a comment, and they said it looks like bird poop on the lens. And when I looked at it, I was like, you know what, it does. And so I wrote that off as like insect guts or something, some kind of dirt on the lens. But if there's more to it, like you're describing, then
Mhm.
I would love to see that kind of emerge so that we could see what happens with it.
Oh, yes, I just saw a special. He was talking about it. I forgot who he was interviewed by, and I think it was Rogan interviewed him, and it's phenomenal. He had way more video and talked in length about that than
Yeah.
has been out than the short video. I try and follow anything I can with water. That you mentioned the one in Puerto Rico too. That was great because the sighting in Puerto Rico was this craft that just kind of oval shaped craft circled around the airport, stopped uh, all flights coming in and out. It was videotaped by the
That
Coast
was the
Guard from their
Aguadilla.
helicopter.
That was
Right.
Aguadilla.
Then when it went into the water, it was going in and out of the water. And then the last time they saw it come out of the water, it had split in two. And they're not sure if it split in two or if it met up with another one and then they submerged.
Well,
So, I
and
mean, that's phenomenal tape.
another possibility is, and this is something that I've speculated on because I run the Alt Propulsion Conference, is it appears to be splitting, but that could actually be a gravitational lensing effect also, right? And
Oh,
if this is using some kind of gravitational propulsion, if it's creating some kind of a field around it, that potentially could bend light. And so and actually, that's not my idea. There was a fellow named Thor or Thorsten from Germany who did an analysis of that. And he looked at it, this was a few years back, and he said, that's gravitational lensing. And when I read his analysis and looked, I was like, yeah, that looks like it could be. So
could be.
there's a lot. Yeah,
The
but
and
going back to the USOs though, do you
right, Nimitz.
as someone who follows this, what are your thoughts on the submarine encounters, especially as someone who dives? I mean,
Oh,
have you
right.
heard what's going on there?
A lot. Mark D'Antonio, who has been with MUFON since I believe he was 15 years old, he's our photo video analyst, a specialist. He was in a submarine back several years ago and got
Hmm.
seasick, and apparently the place to go is sonar. And while he was down there, he saw something just zip across the sonar screen. And was basically told, you didn't see that if you want to stay on our boat.
Yeah.
I also have a local MUFON person here who was on a nuclear sub, and he's retired out of the Navy. He said they were in uh, the Bermuda Triangle, and they had the same thing, that something just shut down everything. It shut down all their sonar, their electronics. He said they were basically blind for about 3 minutes. There's also sightings, reports from when the Soviet Union broke up, and became Russia. There was a lot of information that was released, and the Russian ufologists have got some great books out. There's some great reports, magazines. I researched that, and they have reports of, I think it's called um, Kavaki. I'm not good at
Hmm.
speaking Russian, but basically it's a nickname for croaking frog. And they would go in the one area, the submarines and icebreakers in this one area, I believe it's in the Baltic Sea, and they could hear sounds underwater like a croaking frog. And when they try to get submerged and get deeper, it would move away. And then they would go to leave and it would come back and follow them. And at one point, these sounds were changing frequency, almost like trying to communicate, and they'd leave the area and the sounds would be gone, and then they would go back and there they were. There's reports of being outmaneuvered, outrun by a lot of our submarines. So reports of possible bases. So well, and then even the report from Lake Baikal, and that was, I guess, about 30 years or so ago, and they had the Russian divers, 7 Russian divers that went in the lake, went diving, went down 165 feet, and saw four alien beings that were in silvery suits, 10 foot tall, just with a helmet on for their breathing device. And they surfaced, which if you think if you're a diver, it's kind of scary because if you're 165 feet, you're not going straight to the surface. You've got to go up in levels and make, depending on how long they were down there. I mean, it could have been a couple, 3 hours it took them to get to the surface, or maybe maybe if they went straight down, came back straight up, they still had at least an hour of decompression, if not more. And to know that there's something like that underneath you, well, they went back a few days later to try and catch them with a net, and found the beings again. The lead one put its arm straight out. All 7 went to the surface. 3 died immediately. The other 4 were put in one decompression chamber because they had 2, but 1 was broke. And out of it, 1 diver survived. So, I mean, they don't do their training anymore, but they were the equivalent of Navy SEALs. There's also reports from Russian submarines where they have seen these 10-foot tall beings swimming by at 1,300 feet deep. There was Russian shark the hunter who had seen them, was in a boat and had seen them going by, just seen this large, they're humanoid looking, but like giant 10-foot tall grays. There's a lot of activity in and around Russia, and you hear more about it because, like I said, when their reports were, when the Soviet Union broke up, this information accidentally got out. And now it gets kind of silenced. It's hard to hear anything from China, but I have found more and more reports. I've been doing a lot of research, but what I'm going to be speaking about in the second week of July, MUFON Symposium is going to be in Dallas. But what I'm more interested in right now is what's going on underwater. We all see these craft. The government has finally, they have admitted in 2022, they did say, okay, yeah, this is something that Jeremy Corbell released actually, I think it was in 2021. They said, yes, we don't know what that is, and it had been out since 17. But these things are coming in and out of the water with these submarine, the military in submarines, I guess, nuclear submarine sailors. Okay, let me put it that way. Are hearing and seeing things. It's being picked up on sonar, seeing strange sounds. I made a map, and it's in Pine Bush, New York, for a UFO museum. 6-foot by 4-foot laminated map. I've got over 300 dots that are just oceans and seas. And some of them could have been 10 foot high. I mean, 10 dots high, not 10 foot high. 10 dots high.
Oh, and those are encounters, you mean?
They're encounters. They're logged from merchant ships, fishing ships, cargo ships, military ships, submarines. I was able to get, with my research, I was able to find longitude and latitude. Even Columbus, back in October of 1492, near the Bahamas, had a sighting. So, I mean, sightings go back, water sightings go back for centuries. But I thought, we all know they're coming in and out of the water. What's going on underwater? And it's so deep, the Mariana Trench is 7 miles deep.
Yeah.
So what I'm concentrating on will be things that are seen underwater, sounds that are seen underwater. I've come across about a dozen people who were abducted and taken underwater. And one of the areas, a couple of them were taken, was off the coast of Southern California. Understandably, since there's all those sightings right in there by Catalina Island. But what I found was it's really, really hard to find people who were abducted and taken underwater because people, they remember, if you can read anything on abductions, which my specialty is water, but I was researching into that area, people sometimes remember being taken. They remember when they come back. Under regression therapy, they might remember what happened to them while they were there. They're not remembering the trip there and back.
Yeah.
And I thought, this is a very important piece of information. If you're going to take away somebody's memory of what happened to them, they're going to remember most likely being taken. Coming back, they're going to have this feeling of what happened. And under regression, they might remember, like I said, part of what happened to them. But you want to really make sure that they don't remember the trip. Otherwise, we know where the bases are. We know if there's bases underwater. We know if they're being taken up to a ship or they're taken interdimensionally or through portals. And I was really surprised that very few were able to, were able to describe the trip there and back. And I
Well,
did a
so
year's research on this.
Debbie, let me get into, because you're going to the Catalina Island thing. And I think this goes to this larger question of what makes that area a hot spot, right? And again, I'm jumping around in my questions, but you've got Catalina up towards the northern part, and this is off the Los Angeles San Diego coast. Catalina Island up towards the north, and then like Ensenadas down towards the south. Lou Elizondo and Sean Cahill they went there and saw. And I can come back to that in a bit, but so ABC Eyewitness News Channel 7 reported, quote unquote, "There's something very strange in the ocean off Point Dume, but is it a sign that space aliens have landed in Malibu?" When I read that headline, I just said to myself, you know what, I gotta use that. Aliens in Malibu. There we go. So what they were addressing was this anomalous Google Earth mapping that they've called this out and said, is this some kind of a UAP base? And so I asked you about this a few days ago, and you said, from what I understand, no one has been able to actually go down and look at that because the ocean currents are very unpredictable there, right?
Right. They had a couple different people go and try and make their way down. I had somebody that researched that really had no idea about water or water conditions. And she said, well, we looked and we couldn't see anything. We looked from our boat. I thought, that thing, it's on the bottom at 1,700 feet. I've been diving in the Atlantic Ocean and right off of Laguna Beach, and you can see underwater, but you get to a certain depth and it's deep and it's dark, and you're not going to see from the surface.
Yeah.
Also, too, they had taken an underwater. Let's see, I guess it'd be UAV underwater. Let's see, an underwater view. I can never remember the initials for anything. I'm one of those people that don't remember anecdotes.
You're talking about a remote, right? The robot.
Right, a remote view, an ROV. Okay,
yeah.
ROV. They took an ROV down. They went right up to, they said, the entrance of it, and they said, well, it just looked like coral. I thought, we had a boat in the Florida Keys for about 12 years, and after about 2 weeks, it would build up scum and stuff on the bottom. So we had to have it cleaned, twice a month. I can't even imagine how long that would have been down there. Of course, there was coral and whatever built up. And they didn't even make an attempt to go, and they said, well, no, we don't think it was anything. Well, then I had heard there was someone else that had gone and tried to make an attempt. They took an ROV. They would get down, when they get down about 100 feet, they'd start to lose communication with it, these unmanned vehicles. Yeah. And then they would bring it back up, and then they'd take it down and lose communication again. Something is down there. Now, whether or not it's our Navy, because we do have submarine bases in the area, maybe it's that they're losing the communication because our Navy doesn't want us around in the area snooping around at their submarine base. That's understandable, because that Chinese balloon that came across the nation, it was right off of my back deck for 2.5 hours. About 6 miles north of me is a government mapping area, and I talked to someone who used to work there, and I got 3 pictures from my cell phone. My cell phone went dead. I got a picture from my Sony Handycam, and then a couple pictures, and then my video wouldn't focus anymore. I had a night vision camera and military grade. It wouldn't even record to the scan disk. So this was the government blocking the Chinese balloon. So if you're underwater with an ROV milling around where there might be military bases, yeah, I can see where our government might have blocked that off. But I do believe something is going on underwater in the Catalina area. In 1992, they had over 200 reports of things coming out of the water, and these were reports from Catalina Island coming out of the water and then shooting up in the air. Over 200 reports of UFOs. It went on all day long, and this is reports by military, Coast Guard, police, tourists, residents. So there's been something going on in that area for a very, very long time.
Well, And what's interesting about that is, and again, going back to Sean Cahill and Lou Elizondo, I did an interview with Sean a while ago, and I've talked to him a fair amount. One of the things he had said was he and Lou went down to Ensenada, which is in Baja, California, right? So it's actually
Right.
in Mexico, just south of San Diego. And that was, again, it was a little bit to the, let me see, it would have been to the east of where the Nimitz sighting was. But he had said that the Tic Tac are part of the local fishing lure, and they're spotted regularly, and it's been that way for I think over a century, perhaps longer. And one of the things that intrigued me was this chicken or egg question of who was there first, right? And I think that that's important because so if Tic Tac arrived after we had a major population center off the coast, that makes me a little nervous, right? It's like, why are they there? Is that connected to abductions, if that's a real phenomena or not? But then what it seems to look like is maybe these have been there for hundreds of years, and we just, as the population grows, we're becoming more aware of them. So,
I think not only is the population growing, but we have a cell phone now. Our cell phones take better pictures
yeah,
than the cameras that Apollo 11 used. Um, we have some. So everybody's got one. And there's video, there's pictures. There's nothing that can get by anybody anymore where you see on the news everybody's doing this with their camera. Somebody is bound to catch something. We've also got the public going into space now. So the government has got to start to release little by little and acknowledge you can't flat out say, oh, I'm sorry, that didn't happen. When things are out there, we saw the Tic Tacs. We heard David Fravor say, wow, woohoo, this thing is really moving fast. Yeah, that was what they cut off the tape on that too, because if you listen to any of his interviews, he said that there was a fleet of them. There were maybe a dozen above them. They had been watching this. They had the USS Princess also. They were doing maneuvers, military maneuvers out there for a couple of weeks, and had been countering them off and on. But that particular day, there was over a dozen in the sky. They, up above them, and him and I think it was at let's see, it was Gross. I forgot. Let's see, Graves, Ryan Graves,
yeah,
and they both encountered him. Now the one came down. Fravor decided he was going to go up a little bit higher, and the one single one came down, and then he followed it to the ocean. But he said above him, yeah, there were a lot of them. Also, the one that they followed to the ocean. What they didn't say too much about, and Lou Elizondo talks about this, that um, after it went into the water and then eventually it came up and then shot off, and just within seconds, it was 60 miles away, right off of the coast of San Diego, the spot that when they took off from the Nimitz, they were going to do the maneuvers from the Nimitz over to that area, 60
yeah.
miles
And
to
this
the east up against the coast. And how did this thing know? How did it know where they were supposed to be doing their maneuvers to and from? And it
this
shot over
goes to
there almost like it
those
was waiting for them.
this goes to the five observables, or some people are calling it the six observables now. I think biological effects on witnesses is they're starting to add that in. But yeah, this goes to Lou Elizondo's observables, right? And that instantaneous acceleration, and the
Right.
transmedium travel. And again, the transmedium travel goes right to the water. That to me, this is so intriguing because we're seeing all this new information, and I think it's changing this popular conception of UFOs, right? I mean, again, when you look at the American, the mythos that's grown up around UFOs, you're talking about Area 51, space, things in the desert, things in, the air, and all of a sudden we have water, and it turns out it's been there the whole time. It's just something that wasn't really in our awareness. And so So that's interesting. But the other thing I wanted to ask you about was this nuclear connection. So Robert L. Hastings wrote UFOs and Nukes, and that was an incredibly intriguing book. That was similar, I think, in his way. That was kind of his version. Again, your book was called The Alien Colonization of Earth's Waterways, right? And it's a
Yes.
compendium of sightings and eyewitness encounters. Robert L. Hastings' book, UFOs and Nukes, is a massive compendium of sightings and encounters related to everything nuclear, right? And so that includes, like naval vessels like the Nimitz, as well as submarines, nuclear submarines, as well as storage and processing depots, transportation for warheads and fuel, all of those things. And there has been substantial activity, I guess, around those, which I thought was interesting. So, do you have any thoughts on that connection?
Um, like I said, I concentrate mostly. There's so much out there that you have to have a specialty. Of course, I've heard of all those, read the reports. I have been concentrating on ocean seas in the Missouri area, our rivers north of me, north of St. Louis International Airport and north. There have
Mm.
been some very odd sightings there and a lot of activity. And we've come to find out just recently that I believe it's Coldwater Creek, that area also there it was also stored in which is contaminated, has nuclear contamination. That I grew up in Safford, Arizona, not too far from Tucson. As a child, they were still doing nuclear testing out there, and I remember as a child, I remember the second grade, the one time it just really hit me that we were supposed to go out for recess. And my teacher, Miss Nash, said, well, we can't go out because there's a radioactive cloud going over. So she opened the door and we're all looking to see if we could see it. Well, then I walked home from school. We used to do the duck and cover drills. And so when I moved out of the
My
Arizona
mom did
area,
those. Yeah.
right, and I moved out of the Arizona area, moved to California for about a year and a half. A lot of my family is still there, and they're MUFON investigators. My sisters Diane and Linda are in Southern California MUFON investigators, but so they know a lot about Catalina. But what they did with the Manhattan Project radioactive material was they brought it to the St. Louis area and they buried it near the airport. So
Oh,
now we're
okay.
having all of these sightings in that area, and we did the research and found the connection. And when they're just now starting to clean some of this up, and they said, oh, by 2036, we should have it cleaned up. I mean, some of my friends as children were swimming in that creek that's contaminated now. I mean, and it's been contaminated. So yes, that's how I got brought into it because there were sightings in and around the Mississippi River in that area, and we
And
thought,
it
why is there
sounds like
so much
those
going
are
on?
nuclear related, right? So
Right, and so
interesting.
of course, there's some activity near the Mississippi River, near something that's also got a radioactive connection. So yes, absolutely. They've turned off these unknown craft that hovered over nuclear power plants, and there's been an alarm
Yes.
set off. They've hovered over military silos, and everything has been turned on. You know, like launch, and then it's all turned off again. There's a lot of reports. I have a few reports being a MUFON archivist that I went back to some of the old files. We were trying to get them all on our website, our MUFON website, and there were 9,000 that I went through and renamed, and I think about then redid another 3,500 that we were redacting things like personal address and phone number and like my mom till the day she died, she had the same phone number and address for 40 some years. So you can't take an old file and put it out there and say, oh, they don't live there anymore. Yes, they do. So we want the reports out there, but we don't want the personal information. But there were sightings in and around nuclear power plants and sightings that military people had retired and come forward and said, oh yes, I was working at the missile
Well,
silo at the time.
Yeah, and and this is a little bit kind of off our water topic, but yeah, so in terms of the nuclear connection, one of the things, and Robert Hastings makes this really clear. That book really, for me, that was surprising. So I think one of the challenges is these, what would you call it, the vertical silos for reporting in these, right? So the military, you have this collection of military sightings surrounding the nuclear, supply and distribution, weapons, nuclear aircraft carriers and subs. That's one collection, but they don't always know that you also have sightings around medical facilities, radiation testing, right? Because
Right?
they use radiation for medical stuff. And you also have it near nuclear reactors. And Japan in France has a lot of sightings. Apparently, they had a rash of UFO sightings around their nuclear plants several years ago. And so it's interesting to see these correlations where they haven't been put together, but when you start to look at this larger picture, it's like, well, wait a minute. For some reason there's an interest in that. So it is curious.
If like I said, the book was not going to be about colonization, but after about a month of getting everything all together and trying to piece what I wanted and getting information and reading up, and I had to stop. I stopped for about 3 4 days. It scared me. I looked at this and I thought, these are not visitors. They're here. They have been
Well,
here for centuries. They're underwater hiding. And, the reports go back of the same thing over and over. I looked up the definition of resident, and it's anybody that's been in that area for at least 2 weeks. They've set up housekeeping. We refer to them as the visitors, and some very may well be. And they may be us coming back from the future. There's a lot of possibilities. There's a lot of different descriptions of a lot of different races. But I do believe that, especially in the Russian area, the area of Russia, and possibly in the area of Southern California, they're residing down there someplace. Puerto Rico, there are too many sightings coming in and out of the same area where there's either a portal underwater or some type of a wormhole that they're access in and out from underwater. But in Russia, you've got beings down there swimming around at 1,300 feet deep. We don't know. We don't go down that deep. How would we know what's down there? And then now, I'm hearing that there's something going on in Antarctica. That there's been reports of maybe some type of a city under the ice. And that's something that I just saw a special on. They're going to be talking about that at the MUFON symposium, and so started doing more research on that. I did have one person that said that they were taken to a place that had ice. But the ones that I
Interesting.
had researched were people that were taken underwater, and two of them are in the Catalina Island area. In and
Yeah.
around between Catalina Island, Malibu, and like I said, I'm very familiar with the area. I've been to Catalina Island numerous times. My family my mom lived in Garden Grove, and my sister's in Big Bear now, and I've got family. I actually years ago had a cousin who was the mayor of San Pedro. So I have Wyland paintings. I grew up kind of every summer we would go and spend time with the family, even though we lived in Arizona. So I spent all my summers in California. So I'm very familiar with all of that and all of the sightings. And there are books on just nothing but sightings in the Catalina Island area.
Well, so you bring up a really interesting point, actually, and this is something that I've touched on in other interviews. And for me, this goes to like SETI and I guess this larger picture of life in the universe, right? But so Dr. Hal Puthoff has speculated on the existence of what he's calling ultra-terrestrials. Dr. Kevin Newth did a reinterpretation of the Drake equation. Basically, he was trying to look at the Drake equation from an ET perspective, right? And it's like his idea was, how long would it take starting out, trying to colonize the galaxy or at least explore the galaxy? How long would it take for ET to probably find us? And his estimates, right, suggested that if ET had arrived here, it may have been hundreds of thousands of years ago, perhaps longer. And that goes to what you're saying of, again, there's this paradigm shift where, so maybe they are here from someplace else, but if they have been here for thousands or hundreds of thousands of years, isn't the Earth just as much their birthright as it is ours?
Yes, and in fact, I mean, like I said, I try to watch everything I can, all the new information, and I believe that was Travis from Skinwalker Ranch was
Oh,
on
yeah,
something the
Travis
other
Taylor.
night. Right, and he said that what they found out was interesting, talking about going to Mars, was that um, they started checking the temperature that humans do best health wise, an average temperature 67 degrees. And he said, if you look at Mars in the summertime, I believe the temperature is 67 degrees. He said the astronauts, if they're up for any length of time in the International Space Station, that their inner clock resets to Mars time rather than the Earth. And he said, one needs to think, you know, did we originate at some point from Mars, some of us, or what kind of a connection do we have? We have more of a connection with Mars than we believe that we may have, that we would want to admit. So I thought that was really something that needs to be explored a little bit further. Maybe what happened on Mars. I've seen presentations where there was a gentleman that said that there was an area that looked like there might have been a nuclear explosion. They may have been us hundreds of thousands of years ago and had a nuclear explosion, blew off their atmosphere. I mean, we don't know, but I mean,
Yeah.
there's theories about it out there. But I thought that was the best connection I had ever heard. That 67-degree temperature, and that the way the time their inner clock is set, it leaves Earth and is reset to Mars time. I thought that is just odd.
Well,
There's so much out there that a person has to specialize, and that's why I specialize in water, because
yeah,
it would
yeah.
just drive you crazy. You have to know a little bit about everything, but you have to specialize in something, or you'll never find answers. Hopefully, he'll take that a little bit further.
There are so many different ways. I think the way that we view anomalous phenomena like this, it says more about us and our background than it does about the phenomena, right? And
Right.
when you were just talking about that, like the military, when the military looks at it, of course they're looking at things from a threat perspective, and they're saying, is this a potential danger? And that's their job. That's the way that they're supposed to do it. And I look at things from more of kind of a space science, astrobiology, SETI perspective. But, and then you're looking at things from kind of a water perspective. So we all view the same events from our own background, right? Which isn't a surprise. But for me, this is all really exciting because I think it is opening up a new way of looking at the world, right? And
Right.
and we have various interpretations of that, but it seems like the scope of our existence as the human race is widening, and we're just starting to realize, hey, the universe is larger and more complicated and more diverse than we ever realized in the past, and
Oh,
that's really
oh,
exciting.
absolutely. I'm discovering more and more about that every day. It is. It's just the more that I guess a lot of it has to do with things like this, with more podcasts and people being able to interact. I've always viewed this as a giant puzzle, and every little information you get, another little piece of that puzzle, and then pretty soon you're starting to get a picture. But at the beginning, all you have is a box of pieces. And the more and
Yeah.
more that's put in, and you have somebody like me that can fill in all the sections on water, and then somebody else can fill in something else and something else. And pretty soon, we all get together and we're all sharing information. And it's incredible that we're beginning to get a bigger picture of what is going on than any other time in history. Uh,
Well,
it's
it,
exciting time to live in.
Yeah, and in terms of the puzzle, some of those pieces I think are going to be so complex that we may never be able to put them together. So one
Right.
example is I did an interview with Dr. Stephen Benner, and he, we were talking about life on Mars, right? And Mars rocks, and so NASA they have a very strict quarantine policy on returning, because they don't want to inadvertently bring bacteria back from Mars. And he said that that's all well and good, but he said you have to realize that the Earth and Mars naturally exchange rocks. He reaches in his
Right.
he reaches in his thing, picks up a rock, and he's like, "This rock, this meteorite, is from Mars." And he's like, "Now, what happens is you'll have an asteroid impact that kicks up rocks. It happens on Mars. This has happened on Earth in the past, like the dinosaur impact. It puts rocks into space that may have life on them, and over time those will migrate to different planets." And so, like when people talk about, well, maybe life on Earth originated on Mars, if you're talking about single cell organisms or something, it's entirely possible that this natural exchange of rocks could have. And to take things even further, and again, this is the scale of time here is long, but
Mhm.
I've heard people say that you have potentially what they call panspermia, right? You have comet seeding. If life had started in a comet, that the spray, right, that they give off the tail of that comet could contain bacteria that could land on Earth, or it could potentially, this could fertilize all of the planets in the solar system. And other people have said that some of these comets um, actually leave the solar system and may go towards the galactic center. So the reason I mention that is, again, the complexity that's involved with this. At some point, I think this goes beyond what any of us are able to really know, right? We just have to kind of guess. But I think what it's saying is that the world that we live in is a heck of a lot more complicated than we've imagined in the past.
And if you want to think really deeply about that, okay, so we have people from other worlds, you know, most likely from our galaxy, but who knows, that are coming here. And why are they coming here? Well, they're learning about us. It
Yeah,
makes you wonder. They may be 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 years ahead of us, technology wise, but they're still learning. The learning process never ends. There's always more and more. So I think that's fascinating. I thought they're learning. We have so much more to learn, or maybe we know. Um, well, I think that's what it is. Part of the puzzle. We know things they don't know, and they're
yeah.
trying to learn from us, or trying to learn, maybe emotion. They're trying
Learning our
to
experience. Yeah.
oh, exactly. And I mean, it's this could go on just forever. It's just the whole subject is very, very fascinating. And I have an answer too about the water and why now. You've had sightings on land. You have people that are going to see them, people that are going to report them, people that are going to take pictures of them. The oceans are so vast that things are happening
Yes.
out there that we never see. And the people that are actually out there are the merchant ships, the fishing ships, not as far out as the military, but the ones that are really out there transversing the oceans more than anyone else is military. And they've been able to keep that a secret from us. But it's very hard for military installations on land to keep a secret when the neighbors down the street may have got a picture of it. That's why the secret. And I'm not exactly sure why they decided to start releasing the information from water. These go fast, gimbal, and fleur. And I don't know if they meant to on purpose. I'd love to know some of Jeremy Corbell's some of his connections, but good for him. He's done a lot of work, a lot of research on this for years and years and years, and he's made some kind of a connection. And I think if it had not been for him, we wouldn't know as much about water as we do right now. So thank you, Jeremy. You've done me a great favor because it's like, I've been preaching to this for years and no one listens to me. Well, 5%, 5 to 7% of the sightings are water related, whether it's a lake, river. We find pond scum on vehicles, things and I just couldn't get people interested. And now finally they're saying, well, yeah, maybe you were right. Maybe this does have a very, very, very big water connection.
Well, Debbie, on that note, let me thank you so much for your time today. It has truly been a pleasure. I think that we have given people a lot to think about. And again, I'm going to put links into your book, and that's the alien colonization of the Earth's waterways. I'm
Yes.
also going to put links into some of your talks so that people can learn more about this. And I think that probably the takeaway from today is that there is a deep connection between the UAP phenomena and the Earth's water. This is something that I think all of us will probably be exploring more in the future. I want to close by asking, what is coming up for you in the next few months? What do you anticipate doing in 2024?
Oh, well, the 6th and 7th of this month in Piedmont, Missouri, they have a great big UFO festival because on the 8th is the eclipse. We have the full eclipse over the top of us right here in my state. And also, they have named Piedmont, Missouri from the 1973 sightings. And, that's a whole other thing in Missouri. But they've named it the UFO capital of the state of Missouri. That's so legislation did this last year. I will also be speaking at the MUFON Symposium, and that's the second weekend of July in Dallas. And then also, I'll be in October, the last weekend of October. There's the General MacArthur Museum has a charity event there, and I'll be there in Little Rock. And also, I hear I'm on Ancient Alien. I haven't got to see it. I don't have that subscription on my TV.
I
I've seen
think you've
bits
been
and
on all
pieces.
of those shows. So,
uh, and you can also catch me a little bit more about water. I guess you can go to our website, MissouriMUFON.org. And I have a website, Debbie Diver. Is my website. There'll be a little bit more about what I saw in a picture of the UFOs that I saw off of the cruise ship in 2006. And then my book's available on Amazon. And if you want to contact me, mufondiver@gmail.com. I'll be able,
wonderful.
I'll answer any questions you have if I can.
Wonderful. Debbie, let me thank you one more time so much for your
Oh,
time
thank
today.
you. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. Thank you.